All right, good afternoon, everybody. It is now 3:09, and I'd like to call the meeting to order. Ebony, would you mind doing the roll call, please?
No problem. Ms. Nicole Banks.
Present.
Ms. Melissa Bayham. Ms. Brenda Kosey. Ms. Christy Gonzalez.
Here.
Ms. Meredith Jordan.
Present.
Dr. Hyacinth McKee. Ms. Mary Tarver.
Here.
Ms. Vivian Webb.
Present.
Dr. Phil Wilson. Mr. Eric Taylor. Ms. Renata Washington.
Present.
You have 6 and you have a quorum.
All right, thank you, Ebony. Thank you all for attending. Before we start, I just want to remind you all of a few rules. For attendees, please wait to be recognized by the chair before speaking. To help the meeting run smoothly, please keep side conversations to a minimum and comments related to the topic we are discussing. Also, comments about a person's character will not be allowed. Any questions before we get started? All right. Everyone should have reviewed the July meeting summary, which is linked in the agenda you received via email. There's also a copy in your committee packet. Also, if you have not signed in to the meeting, you can do so, and your package should be over there if you have not received them. If there are no objections to the summary, we can approve the summary by unanimous consent. Are there any objections? All right, hearing no objections, the July meeting summary is passed by unanimous consent. All right, moving right along. First on the agenda is an update on LRS and LDOE Memorandum of Understanding. At the July meeting, it was requested by the committee to get official documentation of the memorandum. We have Melissa. Do we have Melissa?
No, ma'am. My name.
No?
Nope.
Will we have someone in her place?
Stacy Marks. I'm with Louisiana Rehab Services, but
Okay,
from what I was told, we have to get approval from legal to share that information about the MOU. So I don't have that as of yet. Melissa may be able to present that at a later date.
okay. Thank you so much.
Very
And
well.
what's your name again?
Stacy. Last name
Stacy.
is Marks, Marbs. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, well,
Did you? Say?
Ms. Moore,
Yes,
do you have any other updates for LRS?
Yes, ma'am. I did have some information regarding the schools and the assignments and contacts that we have with the high schools.
Okay.
So what we did was we took a summary from each individual region and captured the number of public school, non-public schools, and whether there's a TPCA or a fee-for-service vendor attached to the school. So I could go over that real quick. For Region 1 in New Orleans, we have a listing of 71 public schools, 45 non-public schools. 7 of these schools have a TPCA, and 15 of them have a fee-for-service vendor assigned to them. Baton Rouge region, we have 77 public schools, 36 non-public schools. 11 of them have a TPCA, and 29 of them have a fee-for-service vendor. For the Houma Region 3, we have 13 public schools and 7 non-public. There are no TPCAs in the Houma region, but 15 of those schools are assigned a fee-for-service vendor. Region 4, Lafayette, there's 52 public schools, 25 non-public schools. We have 9 of them that have a TPCA assigned and 21 that have a fee-for-service vendor. Region 5, Lake Charles, we have 33 public schools, 3 non-public schools. 11 of them have a TPCA and 18 have a fee-for-service vendor. Region 6, Alexandria, we have 50 public schools, 6 non-public schools. 3 of them have a TPCA, 20 of them have a fee-for-service vendor. Region 7, Shreveport, we have 61 public schools, 15 non-public. 11 of those have a TPCA and 18 of them have a fee-for-service vendor. And Region 8, we have 40 public schools, 17 non-public, 1 with a TPCA and 32 with a fee-for-service vendor assigned to them. Yes, ma'am.
Can you tell me what a TPC?
Yes, ma'am. When I said it for like the second time, I was like, okay, maybe not to say. The TPCA is a third-party cooperative arrangement, and it's with the local school board or the school district, and it's a contract between the school and LRS for them to provide the pre-employment transition services to the students in their school.
And I just noticed that my area, the Homer area, don't have any.
That's not a big deal. I mean,
Okay.
for them not to have a TPCA, because we do have fee-for-service vendors that are working with those schools. And it's up to the school board or the school district to establish a TPCA. For some, it may be considered a better route for them to do that. But what it does is that the school or the school district is responsible for 78.7% of the I lost the word, sorry. The salary for the transition specialist, and then LRS will pay the rest. So in some cases, the school systems or school districts are not able, and I'm not sure if that's the case, but either they don't want to set up one, or they can't afford to put up those funds to hire that particular person or a more than one person.
Thank you, Ms. Stacy. And could you repeat that? What is
The TPCA is a third-party cooperative arrangement.
Okay, I do
A
recall.
contract between LRS and the school district.
Okay, I do recall us asking for that information. In the, I think, I'm assuming it was, but, because you did tell us about the schools, but as Nicole was stating, do we have, any information on like for her specifics, like, how can we get that in writing for all of them, not just third parties, but everyone that LRS is servicing?
I didn't make any copies, but you all can have
Okay.
this. And it's by region, so it starts from region 1 and goes through region 8. And there's a listing of the school district or the charter school,
Thank
and
you.
then the name of the school, and then whether or not if there's a TPCA or a vendor
Thank you
assigned to
so
that
much.
school.
Thank
Now,
you.
for those that may not have something by them, we have a LRS counselor that's assigned to all of these schools. So even if a vendor is not there with them or TPCA is not there, the school has LRS's information and which counselor they are assigned to contact. And so the counselor can still go and do the IEP meetings, and if a case is open, they can also provide the pre-employment transition services and then also be there to help them transition beyond high school into a traditional VR case.
Okay, my
Yes.
next question, is it factual?
Is-
Is there a counselor at this school that's for all blanks? Do we know that to be
Yes,
factual?
yes. Now, they're not at the school, they're assigned to the school. So someone at the school or the counselor knows that that's their assigned school. And if the school needed to reach out, they will call that particular counselor and say, hey, we have X amount of IEPs, can you come? And if for some reason they can't come, I would assume that they are making contact. We have a pre-S flyer, we have a pre-S brochure, so that they can share that information with the student, school, and their parent.
Thank you, Ms. Stacy.
You're very
welcome. Exactly what we asked for. But I have one more thing that I want to ask.
Yes, ma'am.
Can we get that information as far as those with the blanks? We need a contact information, email or something on that, if that's fine.
I would have to.
You will have to ask Ms.
Yes, ma'am.
Melissa,
Yes,
that's
ma'am.
totally fine, but could you just spread that
I
word?
sure would.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
All right, any other questions? I see a hand raised.
Yes.
What's your name?
Mary,
All
sorry.
right, Mary, you have the floor.
What grade is this starting? Is this junior high or high school?
This is high school, starting at age,
Age 16.
yes, ma'am. 16 to 22, or whenever they exit, if they exit before age 22.
Right, for the TPCA.
That's for all of the pre-employment transition students.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
And they have to have an IEP to get that service, correct?
Yes, ma'am. They have to have an IEP or 504 or have a documented disability.
Okay.
All right, Ms. Stacy, one more question. Can we have that paperwork?
Yes,
Just
ma'am.
I'm just want to make copies for
Can they
everyone.
copy?
Or Ms. Hannah,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions, concerns? All right, we'll move forward. And once again, thank you, Ms. Stacy.
You're very welcome.
Next on the agenda is an update from the Louisiana Department of Education. Meredith Jordan with LDOE is here to provide an update on cameras in the classroom. It was also requested at the July meeting that the committee be provided discipline data relative to students with disabilities. Ms. Meredith, you have the floor.
Yes. So, and I'll just start by following up to what Miss Stacy just shared and just sharing with the group that we were so blessed. She came to our directors meeting yesterday. So we had probably between 80 and 90 special education directors. It was a big room, full audience. Special education directors from our LEAs and from charter schools. And one of the things that we did at this meeting was to invite LRS out to talk about all of those options, because kind of, you know, we've talked about this a little bit, is, you know, do schools know that these options exist? And we got overwhelming feedback that the information shared was very helpful. We had folks in the audience. We have new SPED directors. We have people who may have 2 or 3 years experience, and they were going, oh my goodness. And we really stopped and paused and talked about the third-party agreements, because essentially, like Stacy mentioned, that can help them get some additional staff. And I always tell people, you know, and recommend that when you have an initiative and you want to get something off the ground and you want serious high school transition supports, a lot of times you need a champion of that work. And this opportunity, the TPCAs offer that opportunity to have the champion of that work and to hire a transition support specialist or transition assistant to help school systems do that work and provide those services to students. So we were so grateful that she came out and provided and talked about that program. We also talked about the paycheck program while we were in the meeting too. And so I think that is going to really help strengthen our partnership too, and help to just communicate these are options that are out there, because one, like she just said, you know, we have 15 school systems who are taking advantage of that TPCA. And so really trying to expose all of them and having them all in that room and saying, hey, these are the options. Here's how LRS can partner and support you, was, I think, will be beneficial. I think they'll probably see an uptick in interest in that. So that was really helpful. I really appreciate them agreeing to come out and do that
Better
for us.
attendance with our students too.
It was so well received yesterday. It was phenomenal. And I don't think our directors had heard, I mean, we share the regional office contacts, that kind of stuff, but really diving into what services LRS can partner with and help, I think was huge for them yesterday. So a couple of things. So for cameras in the classroom, a quick update. I pulled our latest spending information this morning, and we are at just over $1 million spent from that SPED camera funding. And so we may see that, of course, increase this year as new parent requests come in, and now as the school year has started, but wanted to provide that update. I know we linked to some of this, but literally, you know, whatever data this council requests, we are more than happy to bring it back. So I hope this at least gives you all some information around discipline. Now, this is from our 21-22 school year, right? So the 22-23 school year ended over the summer. We'll be gathering all the discipline data from last year and reporting on that as well. So we report this data everywhere, federally, state, you know, this is all public information. So whatever the council deems, you know, you want to see, we're more than happy to give, but hopefully this gives you something. So if you look and see, I will say, so table 15, and this is part of a really large document. And so I pulled out the discipline specifically. The first table tells you by parish, and this shows you a 3-year comparison. By parish, students with disabilities, their discipline information, what do those removals look like? What % of their students had in school, out of school, an alternate site, or in school suspension, or to an alternate site, and out of school alternate site. So suspensions and expulsions. So a lot of this you will see because of suppression rules, and there were so few children that you'll see that less than 5 notation, less than 5%. So we couldn't give an actual if it's less than 5. So that's all data suppression rules. But you will see some school districts where you will see the actual percent if they had the student population to actually dig into and represent a number, right? Higher than 5%. So that's the first table that you see there. And then you'll see table 15B, you'll get a 3-year comparison. One of the things that I really pulled out of this and that I think is worth just putting on record is, so it shows you 3 years, 1920, 2021, and 21-22. Well, remember, 2021 was coming off the pandemic year, right? And so you see that drastic dip because many schools were still in virtual instruction. Children weren't always in school to be disciplined or show those behaviors in the school setting. So that's the reason for that extreme dip for the 2021 school year. And then you see in 21-22, some of those numbers start to go back up. However, one of the things I did notice was we weren't at those same levels of out of school suspensions or expulsions that we were in 1920. So just an observation there. And then that very last table shows for 21-22 by disability, those removals. And so by disability category. So one of the things that you can pull out and see there. So when we talk, there are very strict discipline rules around students with disabilities. Supposed to be, right? Now, what you see are, right, so those disability categories where you will say, okay, that behavior could be a direct relation to the disability, you'll see those are lower numbers. But when you look at, so one of the things that you notice is other health impairment or specific learning disabilities, those disability categories have higher numbers of removals. Those are those disability categories where it may be more difficult to say the behavior is due to the disability, right? So, happy to entertain any analysis of this, any questions, thoughts. I will say one of the things as we came off of our regional tour recently, because we kind of recognize that we tend to at the department have people come to us for professional development. And so we decided as our team, we start going out. One of the things that we have been hearing is that behavior challenges are, of course, increased post-pandemic, with different social exposures, interactions, or the lack thereof. And so school systems are seeing and requesting support for behavior. So we know at the department, we've got to do a little bit more around that. So we've actually been working on and looking at some really great partners for that, and what more we can offer statewide in terms of behavior supports for our children, some trauma-informed training, some things like that across the board. So certainly happy to answer any questions or thoughts around any of this data. I'll let you manage questions.
All right. Ms. Christie, you got the floor.
Thank you. Ms. Meredith, the data, is this from the manifestation determination or is it from J Campus?
So this data is coming from STIR and those removals. So every time they are removing, and you'll see a lot of this talks about total greater than 10 days.
Yes.
That is what the feds require us to, because of
Okay.
course, that's when some of those very strict discipline
So around
rules when you're trying to remove.
Okay.
Yes, when you're trying to remove a student for more than 10 days and you're having manifestations, yes.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I don't know, it's supposed to wait to be recognized.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
That's okay. You have the floor. What's your name?
Bill
Bill.
Wilson, thank you. So this is not necessarily a question. It's a couple observations and then I don't see a really good place to make my comment on the agenda, so I'm going to slip it in here as well. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm the director of the Human Development Center, which is part of LSU in New Orleans. And we are the state's federally authorized developmental disabilities center of excellence. Okay. And we're actually in the DD Act, we're a named partner along with the DD Council and the Disability Rights Louisiana. So we are supposed to be Louisiana's DD network. So I want to start with a quick observation, then I want to make a comment that may not fit directly right here, but I don't know where else to get it into the sort of the agenda. So first off, the two categories that you named, OHI or other health impairment and specific learning disabilities, are also categories that people sometimes when they're doing diagnostics, they know there's something not quite, on par with this particular child. Sometimes the family prefers, they're talking and it's like, I don't know. There's a lot of different ways we could go with getting a diagnosis or an educational label to this child so that we can provide him or her services. And so sometimes those families will kind of opt, and the diagnostician may opt for, okay, let's go with OHI or let's go with a specific learning disability. I will say that in my experience with autism, a lot of kids with autism end up with OHI labels, not so many with specific learning disabilities. And the reason I mention that is to make the assumption that these kids may have unexplained reasons why they have behavior challenges may require us to look a little deeper under the sheet and see what's really going on with that child and so forth. At the end of the day, I don't think any of us really care what label our child has or our students have if we can provide them the services that they need, right? So that leads me to my comment piece that I just don't know where to fit it in here. But the Human Development Center has made a commitment over the next 5 years to focus on fetal alcohol spectrum disorders. And if I could be so bold as to take a couple minutes just to, I don't want to knock us off the schedule or anything like that, but may I continue for a minute or two?
And if you get too lengthy.
Okay, I will. So just start giving me the chain, the rope or whatever. But so can I ask a question? Like what's the prevalence of Down syndrome? Anybody? What do you think roughly?
700 births.
Yeah, 1 in 700. Some people say 1 in 800, but there's a bunch of studies, of course, right? What's the prevalence of cerebral palsy? That's another pretty common thing. Huh?
But I know that.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know.
I don't know that right now. I'm thinking I should.
Not necessarily.
Presentation.
It's between 1 in 400 and 1 in 500. Again, lots of different statistics out there in the world. I'm not going to go on much further, but let's say autism. What's the prevalence of autism?
1 out of 25.
Yep.
No.
1 out of 36.
1 out of 36 is the most recent number. It just came down from 1 out of 42. I will say when the earth was cooling off and I was in graduate school, it was 1 in 800.
Wow.
Is what the prevalence number was. Now, some of that's an artifact of definitions changing and all that kind of stuff. And some of it's something is going on, right? Okay, what is the prevalence of fetal alcohol spectrum disorder? What do you think?
1 out of 10. I don't know.
1 out of
1 in 50, 1 in 10.
1 in 10, 1.
1 in 50.
1 in 75.
I heard there's a lot of people that have fetal alcohol syndrome.
It's estimated at 1 in 20.
Okay.
The CDC, the Center for Disease Control in Washington, or actually in Atlanta, come to think of it, and the World Health Organization both cite fetal alcohol spectrum disorder as the leading cause of developmental disabilities in the world or in the country respectively, right? The reason why we are committing ourselves over the next 5 years to this is that those kids are also ending up in these other categories somewhere, or they're being exited from school for reasons that aren't really defensible for us professionals, because we tend to lump these kids in with kids who have autism or an intellectual disability or mental health challenges, and we're not giving the right interventions.
Right.
And as a result, they are failing, they're frustrated, their parents and their foster parents are very frustrated. It starts a cascade, and I asked before we had a change of leadership to have an opportunity to talk tomorrow to the full council. I'm not prepared to do that now because I didn't really get a confirmation because of the timing of all that. But I'm hoping that the council and Department of Ed, Rehab Services, that our agents, other adult agencies will kind of join in. I've got a good partnership going with DCFS around foster care starting right now. But I think it's something huge that all of you guys as advocates and self-advocates, that this is something that we really need to focus on. There is some legislation pending. It's called the Respect Act. I think our legislative representatives, congressional legislation is pretty well aware of it. We're going to be going to DC in early November, and we're taking some of our students, whatnot, to go talk to them about fetal alcohol spectrum disorders and why we have to watch that line between advocacy and education, but to try to help them understand why it's so important. And I would go on and on and on, but I probably have expended my time here, but I appreciate you letting me kind of make that comment because I didn't know how to get it into the conversation. So it's there. It seems like it's an education issue, and it definitely is an employment issue. I'll just close with, this is a school to jail situation.
Yep.
It is, these kids appear to be troublemakers, but I could explain to you why it's not that.
They're frustrated.
Yeah, they're frustrated because basically they have a brain injury.
Mhm.
It's like if you needed a wheelchair and you couldn't get to the bathroom in a quick way, people would understand that something bad is going to happen, or something not necessarily bad, but something that you don't want to have happen, right? If your brain is full of lesions or holes, it doesn't have neural connections that a typical brain has. It takes that brain a long time to process information. And a lot of people that have fetal alcohol spectrum disorders do not comprehend cause and effect. So you take that and you try to use what we all kind of think BCBA, if you do this, this is what's going to happen. We'll try to make it a good thing if you do what we want you to do, and we'll try to at least withhold things if you do a bad thing, not necessarily punish people, right?
Right.
That is the approach that many people try to use with kiddos that have fetal alcohol spectrum disorders. It doesn't work because they don't recognize cause and effect. So I will honestly, but you'll hear more.
It was very interesting. Thank you.
We do invite you. We're going to be sending something out soon from HDC to try to get people who are interested. So even if you yourself aren't a big advocate in this area, if you know somebody who might be, especially foster parents, there's a huge 17 times more likely that a child in foster care will have fetal alcohol spectrum disorders than a child just in the plain vanilla world.
Other question. So how is one diagnosed with that, or even know that they have that going on? Because sometimes the parent is just not gonna be honest and say, yep, I was drinking when I was pregnant.
The only thing I remember is their eyes being
Well,
far apart?
So actually,
What's far apart?
I'm,
Harm.
if I can answer this question, I mean, I need to stop when you guys need me to stop. But that's a misnomer, okay? It is not a misnomer that about 10% of kids who have what we call the full FASD, the full FAS, I mean, fetal alcohol syndrome, will have physical characteristics of the effect of prenatal alcohol exposure, which sounds better than fetal alcohol spectrum, but you know, it's part of the problem with fetal alcohol spectrum is the stigma. You know, when the kids have that really full spectrum and they have physical characteristics and typically more likely to have an intellectual disability as well as mental health and lots of organ system problems, those kids are only 10% of the total population of kids that have FASD. About a third of the kids have what's called partial FAS, and they would have like if you really stare at them a lot or you around a lot of people with FASD, you kind of, oh, I think has this kind of look, right? Typically, their other symptoms are still there, but not as expressed either. And then really the majority of people that have FASD really have no physical characteristics at all. They just have the learning and the brain issues and the emotional and all those other things. So here's the thing, what makes it really hard to begin to figure out how to deal with this situation is the stigma. Like one of y'all just said, what mother wants to say, oh, I was drinking when I was pregnant?
Right.
Probably not a lot,
Right.
but understand that. So the brain starts to form at about day 15 from conception. It's one of the first organ systems that begin to differentiate from, you know, turn into something, right? That's the absolute worst day for mom to have a drink. Now, there's a lot of ladies in the room. Many of you probably have had children. When did you know you were pregnant?
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, not at-
I was about to say, I didn't know.
I was.
Yeah, usually a couple of months, 8 weeks, yeah, or later sometimes, right?
Yeah.
So there's really should be no stigma on moms. It's more of our society hasn't made people, just like smoking, you know, my grandfather smoked like 5 packs a day, whatever. But now we know that that's bad for you. So we have a lot of things to do. And one of the things we have to figure out is how do we kind of get the word out without touching that stigma button? They're just going to make people hide back further.
Okay, so you know how, like when a baby is born, they go through all kind of testing and all kind of stuff before you even, you know, see the baby, really, if they do.
Mhm.
So that's what I'm asking, is there some type of test or something that can be ran or some kind of diagnosis process
So
that can happen?
not really.
So we can nip it in the bud, you know, from the
Sure.
beginning.
So that's another big problem is that so whatever mom drinks in terms of alcohol is the blood level of the baby is going to be the same as for mom. You just have a glass of wine, okay, you know, a lot of people who's obese will still tell you, oh, that's fine. You know, you're stressed out. Go ahead, just have one, take a nice warm bath, have a glass of wine, relax. You know, it's really hard being pregnant. I don't know, but I've got 3 daughters, so I have some sense of that it's not the world's easiest thing to do. That's really wrong. There's no time when it's okay to drink when you're pregnant because what you drink, your baby drinks. So here's the issue is why it's so unless mom had a drink that same day, whether it be alcohol in her bloodstream, there wouldn't be a way to test to see if the child has fetal alcohol spectrum. There is a way to tell if mom drinks in the 2nd or 3rd trimester by looking at the meconium, the stuff that comes out with the afterbirth or whatever, and they can do some tests there. But apparently it's not cheap and it's not regularly done unless there's probably something else that they're worried about, right? So there's not an actual, so the way we identify kids that have fetal alcohol spectrum disorder is through these brain-based kinds of things. They don't have good executive functioning, which means Like people like Meredith here probably have 8 things to do at the same time. I'm pretty much, the rest of you guys have at least 7 to do at the same time. So that's called like when you can think about one thing, do another thing and plan something else. That's executive functioning. Or go down the hall, turn left, pick up a can of Coke, bring it back, pour it in the plant, start the coffee and sit down at the table and make a phone call. That's sort of all that stuff is like, I got to hold a lot of stuff in my head. These kiddos, because of their brain injury, can't do that. Also, because of their brain injury, they think really slowly compared to us. What, as little babies, they don't seem that slow, right? Because all babies are a little slow and whatever. But as they get older, our expectations, if you ask a 4-year-old, you know, where's the bathroom when you're at someone's house, and they don't tell you, oh, it's down the hall, you know, GG or whatever. They don't tell you right away. You think, what, where's it at? Where's it at? But when you're 15 and you're doing that, people think either you're dumb or you're being stubborn or something, because yesterday when I asked you, you told me. Today you can't tell me.
Yeah.
And it takes so much energy for them to process. That takes like 10 times as long for them to say something or do something.
Right,
They also have really bad memory.
right.
And that's part of that process. It appears they have a bad memory because we have a neuron that goes from here to here. They have to go through all the Swiss cheese holes to get from here to here and then back through the connections they have in their brain. And then last, I don't know how this comes into play, but if a neuropsychologist would test and they don't understand cause and effect, a kid could put his hand on a hot stove today and go, ah. If that's a typical kid, you probably don't have to say a word to him tomorrow when he comes in, right? This guy would go back there and put his hand on it all over again.
Right.
And that's sort of this cascade that starts with teachers and parents where they think the kid, I've seen you do this before. What's the rule about chewing gum in my class? Can't do it. Okay, so why did you just take out a piece of gum and put it in your mouth and chew it? Well, I don't know. So it's like, okay, this kid's just troublemaker. And it starts down this whole thing. And the next thing you know, that kid hates being in school. He's withdrawn and appearing. And on top of all that, they get bullied so much, just like a lot of other kids that have disabilities, that they just are constantly, it's a miracle that some folks make it to adulthood and are full, talented people.
Right.
So I got to stop. I know.
Well, thank you so
Yeah,
much
thank
for that
you.
insight. That was a great dialogue. Appreciate it.
You guys will help us though, right? The council will help us?
Yes, most
Next
definitely.
Department
Thank you.
head, LRS. you know.
All right, before on the agenda, Ms. Meredith, do you have any other, we have a hand?
Yes.
All right, you have the floor.
Thank you. Okay, I wanted, when you're looking at that table 15B, that's looking at the 3 school years. When you're getting to the big numbers, like the number of children with out of school suspensions, expulsions, and we get to 8,500 and 5,400, 7,080. Where or how, because I guess I'm trying to figure out where did those numbers come from? Because those are big numbers, and that and the in-school suspension, total disciplinary removals gets to 31,000.
So, yes, and so this is not counting children, I don't believe, but so total removals. So it could be the same child, but multiple removals, but I can check and make sure, Mary, but yes. So it's about the total removals, how many times a student, could be the same student, was removed.
So
In one school.
I think whenever I started looking at this online, I ended up going to Louisiana Believes, I think. Was there a bill passed that you're trying to get less out of school suspensions? There was something about, and I didn't print it out. I just looked at it and I thought I would remember, but there's when you're looking at these numbers, you're trying to at least get the kids not to be out of school suspension. You want them to be in school, because it certainly is not going to help them to not be in school. So do you know what I'm talking?
I don't know of a
Okay.
bill,
Okay,
but share it with me if you find
I
it.
will.
And it might
Okay.
trigger something for me.
So when you're looking at this, did you start doing any analysis and anything come up to you like, gosh, this seems, I mean, I know like the whole year. Okay. Okay, true. Oh, no. Yeah, well, I want you to be okay. You know, the COVID year, I kind of
Yeah.
disregarded, but the other years, and I just wonder, was there something that is pointing to you to say, we need to work on something? And I heard you say that maybe the IEPs or did I write this down? I was wondering, out of these kids, are these kids that have IEPs and behavioral health plans, do they have an IEP and no behavioral health plan? And here they are getting in all this disciplinary action and they don't have a plan.
Yeah. So we actually kind of just, and there is no rule of thumb, right? Other than, right, federal law is really clear about 10 days, right? At 10 days, those kids have to have an FBA and a BIP in place.
Not until 10 days.
Well, okay, they've got to have one.
Well,
But one of the things that we talked a lot yesterday with the directors is about, I mean, I was in the school system and we had, we almost did like a 4-7-10. So if there's a discipline referral trying to happen and it's 3 or 4 days, it's too many. You're missing instruction.
Yeah.
And so but that's not an official. So sometimes local school systems have their own local discipline policies, student code of conduct. 10 days, they don't have a choice. Those students who have multiple referrals and they're being removed 10 or more days, they've got to have an FBA and they've got to have a behavior plan in place. I'm with you, Mary. It should happen way sooner.
so are you saying like the 10 days, it wouldn't be like it's happening all at once? You've done something so bad, you're gonna have to be out of school, but I'd do something in August. I'd do something
Exactly.
in January.
And it could total up to 10 days.
Oh,
Yes. Yes. So not all of those are 10 days all at once.
okay.
It can be an accumulation up to 10.
But they have to be out of school suspension, right? Not an in-school suspension.
So the 10-day discipline rule for IDA is a removal. It does, if it's in school, if it's out of school, you cannot continue to remove students with disabilities out of the classroom.
Okay.
Yeah.
Out or in either.
It's out or in. We do look at it and report it in this way to the feds, like what does that look like for in school? What does that look like for out of school? But you can't keep changing their placements. Here is something else that we're being really communicative about with directors. And this has been a real interest with the current OSIP administration as well, the U.S. Department of Ed and the Office of Special Ed Programs there is, and we talk a lot about with our directors, and we hear this, that there are also what I call these passive removals, right? Where the child is, I can't deal with them today. Come get them, mom.
Time out.
If you come get, it has to stop.
Yeah.
We cannot, and so those don't, right? That's not captured.
No.
If it's not called suspension or expulsion and documented as that removed. So those are things that I am being very passionate about with our directors to stop. And when we're out, and it's not right. So in this you've got school principal, like there are a lot of decision makers that are at different levels of that, right? You have school level leaders that we've got to do better educating them around those rules and what you can and can't do. But I do think it starts with school system leadership. It will start with our special education directors communicating that and saying, this is not okay. This is not allowable. don't do it. Don't call mom to, to come get them, but what are the supports in place? What is that behavior plan in place? What positive behavior supports do we have in our school system? So that is something that I've been very passionate about, are what I call the passive removals, not even the ones that are documented, but some of those adult behaviors that happen, not children behaviors, adult behaviors that are resulting in some of our kids missing valuable instruction. If we're going to improve outcomes for our kids, we have to stop those practices. And to me, that's a very easy thing to do. But it does require communication and non-negotiables, all the way down to those school level leaders who are making some of those decisions. And that's something that I've been very open and have conversations with OSIP about, and with other states around how we address that. One of the things, because one of the pieces about that we do when we have on-site special education monitoring is the day before our monitoring team goes out, they hold a parent meeting, and they are so valuable. You can get so much information about what is or is not happening. And so those are spaces where we can hear some of those things and then address them through monitoring. Because until we know, and we have those parents who are saying, hey, like I'm called to come get my parent X number of times this week. And, and so they're passive, they're not documented, but it has to stop. So that's something I'm really passionate about.
They're also, we've run into that with Hayden and the teachers saying, if you don't come today, well, we have a field trip on Friday. So now you can't go to the field trip unless you go with them. And that happens a lot.
The parents watch.
So if you need to talk to a mama about that.
Yes, I love, we hear a lot, those parent meetings we actually, talked with our directors yesterday, and not that some of them or most of them are doing it, but we asked them, we're doing on-site, and we send you that notification. Because we kind of do it all for them and send out that notification for that parent meeting in advance so the parents know and can get there. Don't send it, 24 hours before we're coming to do the parent meeting. Send it out 2 weeks in advance so parents can get there, because that input is so valuable. You're like the students, they'll tell you ask them and they'll tell you exactly what's happening, just like kids will. And so I think that's really valuable. And that's where we hear, some of those same stories about, these are some of the passive things happening. So I think, to me, what stands out to me is, beyond this, even what's reported, we have work to do and expectations to set around what should not happen.
Definitely. All right, I see a hand. Nicole, you recognize?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Do they already know the do's and don'ts? Because at this point, they should I ain't gonna say they automatically do, because I know they have new people coming in and out all the time.
Yeah.
But they should have seasoned people there to tell those newcomers that come in, hey, look, when you run into this kind of crisis with this student, this is what we can do, this is what we can't do. Before school starts, before, all of that to me needs to happen. Because that would be the part of the problem. That would be breaking it down. You already know now. You're an adult, so you should already know that this is what you can and cannot do, and this is how to handle this.
I think it's two parts. So we're about to open up some statewide training and PD modules that school systems can also use with school level staff. Because I think that's the part about being a state agency is we're doing a lot of support for that system level leadership. But we also recognize we've got to do more to get to teachers, to parents, to kids. And so it's two parts. One of it is, I think, opening up some of these statewide modules. One of them, we're in the process of choosing them, and they're developed by, y'all probably familiar with LRP. It's a national organization around special education law. So part of it is they need to know the law because discipline law and students with disabilities is very, it is one of the pieces for IDA that's very black and white. And I think the second piece to your point, Nicole, is about the strategies and the supports. And so we do have a lot of vendors who are really great at this, that I think we could partner with and do more to help even, and we're seeing this, even our general educators, right? So the vast majority of our kids are in general education settings, which is great. It's where we want them, getting high quality instruction, supported by a special educator when they need it, or a related service provider. But getting those strategies for all teachers, not just special educators, but even the general educators who, you know, sometimes whether they do or not, they may feel like, well, I don't have that training. I don't know what to do. You know, that's the SPED student.
That's
And
true,
so
though.
getting them the comfort of, here are the strategies, here are some things that I can do in my classroom to keep them included, and to help support those behavior needs. So I think it's a two-part addressing this. Just what does the law say and what are the strategies to help support
I'm
kids?
just saying because I'm a teacher and I have, half of my class, I got like 27, 25 students in each class. And about half of the class is accommodations and they get all this, they need all these extra stuff. But, I've been working with students with disabilities before this. So
Mhm.
I know, but they have other people that don't know at
Right.
all.
Yeah.
So, I just say that just for maybe next year to think about,
Mhm.
having that training in the summer or making it required for all new
Position.
teachers or
Mhm.
really everybody that's teaching. If you have a classroom and you're teaching in Louisiana, you need to have it because you're gonna deal with a 504 or IEP student because
Right.
they're in your classroom. They're in your classroom.
And it needs to be looked at as all students, not.
That's all,
Yeah, all
exactly,
students.
Yeah.
exactly.
Because if you do the modification for one, it helps for all of
It
them.
really does, because not all students are diagnosed with things and something is
Mhm.
clearly wrong with them. Not every student is on an IEP or a 504 plan that has something not quite right with them.
Some of these things that started at the top.
Yeah.
They have to.
And it gotta
make
trickle
sure
down to
those-
us.
Yeah.
Yes. Great conversation. I saw a hand. Let's make sure that we're mindful of time.
Just a quick
So.
comment, and I don't know if, I'm not really recommending what I'm about to say, but maybe there's a way to take something like what LRP or some other entity has put together. So at LSU, we all hate this, but it really kind of works. But with our information technology people, they have what they call required compliance trainings.
Yeah.
And it's the same boring, ridiculous training. It's usually it's all web-based, so you read some things and then you have to take a test. And, I don't even read it anymore because I've been working there 25 years and I
already know the
can
answers.
say, so, right? But people don't
Yeah.
learn and retain stuff
Just.
just by training them in August or July. But if you can figure out if schools must have intranet kind of stuff for their
The
teachers
ethics.
and related service and administration folks, maybe there's some of these basic things like that could be modularized and have a little test. If you miss more than 3 of the 10 questions, you have to do it over,
Okay.
right? And it's all annoying because, but it really does end up
Right.
You
knowing.
do remember it every year.
And make it mandatory.
Yeah, that's what
Yeah.
mandatory.
As a teacher, that is our, part of our job
Mhm.
description.
Yeah.
So we need to be able to, everybody needs to know these things.
Right.
Just as Nicole stated,
Right.
so mandatory trainings for all
Mhm.
teachers, not just SPED
Mhm.
teachers, but
Right.
all teachers.
You have a question, comment down here?
Yes.
Help you solve it.
Yes, I did.
Can
Thank
please be
you.
careful with how we talk about students with developmental and intellectual disabilities. There is nothing wrong with them for being in a world that is built for neurotypical people. There is nothing wrong with them for being different than neurotypical people. They just are.
I agree.
Absolutely.
All right, any other opinions, questions, concerns? Any other
Last
updates?
thing.
Yes.
Many of you may have already heard that we are in the process of interviewing and hiring a special education ombudsman for our state.
Good.
To help support and streamline supports for our parents. So this will be a first for our state. We're not the first state. There are a couple of other states who have special education ombudsmen or ombudswoman. But we are gonna have our very own, so we're excited about that. And as we hire that person and we start to communicate and get information out about how to communicate that person, how to find that person, of course, that's the whole point, is it's not meant to be a secret. So we get that person's contact information out there. I'll definitely share that that update with the council as well. It should be soon, before we meet next time. For sure.
Okay.
Yes, 1 second, we're gonna move on with the agenda. I'll get back with you, but we do need to move on.
Okay.
What else? Is that all?
That's it.
Okay. Ebony? I'm good? Okay. All right, guys, the time is 4:05. Let's continue with what's on the agenda. Thank you, Meredith, so much, and everybody that has contributed to this discussion. Great conversation. Now we will move on to our contractual activities. Ebony, will you start us off with the Louisiana Post-Secondary Inclusive Education Allowance?
This is activity 3.1, or in the, status report.
Y'all first, and them that.
Oh, yeah, I can talk a little louder, Jill. It's activity 3.1.1. I think I might have said 3.3.1 initially, but it's 3.1.1. And Dr. Verlinda Beckers is still serving as the LaPi liaison with the Advisory Council on Post-Secondary Inclusive Education Programs with the Board of Regents. The Advisory Council is currently focusing on disseminating application reminders for the Post-Secondary Inclusive Education Fund. They will be having a meeting on October 31st. And I think at that meeting, they're determining how they're going to use the additional funding that they received during the 2024-2023 legislative session. So in total, they received $1 million for this last session. So they're going to determine how they want to utilize that funding at the next meeting on October 31st. But Dr. Beckers is continuing to provide technical assistance. And in this last quarter, she provided technical assistance to LSU on the Baton Rouge campus and the University of Louisiana at Monroe. So that is the update for LaPi. Anybody have any questions?
No questions? All right, thank you, Ebony. Now, Hannah, will you give us an update on seminars on hiring individuals with developmental disabilities?
Yes, that's activity 3.2.1.
Where.
23 East, formerly O'Neill Communications, completed the Your Next Best Hire, which was a 5-part series on employers need to know on how to include people with disabilities in their hiring processes. The recording of these 5 webinars can be found on the YouTube page, the council's website. There was 5 sessions, was building DEI in the workplace, getting started, the impact for employers, benefits for employers, and recruiting employees with disabilities. So all of these webinars are up, and the recordings will be shared via social media. Questions?
I don't have a question, but I did want to mention one more thing for the LaPi activity. Dr. Beckers and her team did produce a new LaPie video. It is really excellent. So we'll be sharing that on our social media as well. She shared it with us, I want to say last week, so we'll be pushing it out.
Okay. Any questions for Ebony or Hannah?
I just wanted to mention about the LaPie stuff. It started last year was the first class we had at LSUA in Alexandria. And two of the moms that started it, they were recognized from Blue Cross Blue Shield of Louisiana and got the Angel Award honorees this year because of the efforts that they made to start that there and work with the university. So it's exciting to see where it started right here at a council meeting a few years ago, and now it's across, it's getting bigger and bigger across the state, and more people are realizing it. So.
Oh, wow.
What's the acronym for again? What is it?
The Louisiana Post-Secondary Inclusive Education.
Thank you.
The Louisiana Alliance for Post-Secondary Inclusive Education, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
We love some initials.
I know, it's kind of like you.
Yeah.
Like, what is that?
All right, any more questions for Ebony or Hannah? All right, we're at 4:10, and I would like to bring it back to Miss Meredith. I want to call you Dr. Field.
You can call me anything.
I can call you Dr. Field.
Whatever you like.
We're going to give the floor back to Dr. Field. He has some more things, and I do like this conversation that we're having. I just want to make sure that we get everything on the agenda so that we don't go past time. So now, since we've gotten everything on the agenda and we have more time, I would like to bring it back to this discussion. So Dr. Field, you have.
I just had a question for Meredith about the ombudsman, which I think
Yeah.
it's great. Over a long needed kind of thing, but so what has a department given much thought, and don't take this as like a backhanded compliment here, but I mean, I'm thinking that if I were a parent that has had a long standing, I don't feel like I'm being heard kind of thing. And then I hear, oh, the Department of Ed is going to have an ombudsman or ombudswoman. I don't know if I'm going to believe that that's, what have you done to try to make it clear that this is an independent person, or are they employed by the Department of Ed? Who do they report to? Oh, I report to Cade. Well, is this really, I'm not saying that it wouldn't be, but I know how perceptions can.
It is, it's definitely something that we talked about internally. And I know most of you also probably saw the recent audit report that came out around our complaint process. This was one of the recommendations, and we had kind of started talking with them about it already anyway as well. And was definitely something we agreed with. The hard part is that we can't tell Bessie to hire someone, so like you have some states where that person is also under the board, right? So I think our stance was we can only do what we have the control over to do in terms of hiring or saying, hey, this individual is needed. Some states you have that person that is created, or a position like that's created by legislation. So we didn't have that, right? So sometimes it's a person who's under, the state legislature or something like that. This individual will be an employee of the department. But it's kind of what we had the control to do, right? In hiring decisions and creating, and we didn't, to be very clear, we didn't get a new position for this. We kind of repurposed a different role, a different position.
Okay, I don't want to.
Go ahead.
So, I mean, is there any possibility or any thought, has any thought been given to looking for a third party? And, I don't know who to say, I'm not looking for HTC, but I mean, we have Disability Rights Louisiana. It's a nonprofit who has the sole reason for existence is to make sure people's concerns about equity and
Right.
proper treatment and all that are,
Yeah.
I mean, if you had, I don't know what other entities exist. You know, that may be something that I'm not even aware of. It doesn't necessarily have to be a disability thing. But if there was a third party, I think that what you really want is you want people to really tell you what, you'd have that coming out the gate. And I just,
Yeah.
you know, I just don't know if that's something that was given any thought. And I realize that may have been thought of by, you know, at the superintendent and or Bessie level. But if that's something you can carry back, if it's not too late to think about that, then
Yeah.
it'd be a sort of a recommendation, I guess.
Thoughts?
I have a thought. So are you saying that, because, let's say they haven't found this person or the whole little ombudsman thing or whatever. Are you saying that, that they should like get a third party because you don't think that the people that, that the community is going to be honest about what they're getting and what they're not getting? Is that why we need the third party?
I think it would. I think there are some people who would just not trust that this really is a independent and, you know, somebody above that person who's paying their check is not going to put pressure on them for this or that.
So
I'm not saying that's really what would happen, but I am saying that, you know, perception is reality to a certain extent.
Right,
Yeah,
okay.
just a thought. And if it's not an issue, then it's not an issue, but it would seem like an issue.
Yeah. I think definitely this person, and I think, you know, to a larger extent, even after the audit report that came out, is so much trust building
Yeah.
between this person and our parents and families is going to be huge. Even, and I, you know, even to your point, even if we contracted with someone, you're still technically paying, right? Like they're not a permanent employee, I guess, but you're still paying their contract, but.
If you contracted with an entity
Yeah,
and they
It's
paid the
third-party.
salary, then they would be an
Yeah.
employee of that
Yeah.
entity. You know, it's not the biggest, I mean, I think it's fantastic effort on the part of the state to address something that has really been not well handled for the last 25 years that I've lived here.
yeah. And I think giving parents that first line and a contact, you know, because right now, you know, there are a lot of times that parents talk me to work, they talk me home, it's great, it's, you know, so we have that on our team, we're supporting parents on our team. You know, you have our dispute resolution coordinator who is doing parent contact as well. And so I think definitely getting one person that's that go-to, that frontline person for our parents, you know, sort of that liaison, you know.
Yeah.
Here's my question, where do I even go to get an answer? Or
Will LACAN or one of the groups that the council have be actively pushing this out so that people will know? Because I would think
that would be
a lot of people that have issues or feel they have an issue will go to LACAN. And if LACAN, you know, regional folks can help make people aware, that would help too, I think.
Yeah.
So it's only gonna be one for the whole state.
Has to do.
Yeah, that's too much. Yeah, they have to have one in one each.
But each area, they're trying
In each region.
each region.
Yeah,
Well, you said one, I was like, no, that's not what she really needs, but then he's like, we're gonna get that one, that's like, not for the whole state, that's gonna be a lot for that, person. It'll be overwhelming.
what's the salary?
My next question. Wow.
I'm not sure.
Is it somebody from the State Department? Are y'all?
No, they opened it up, they opened it
Oh,
up,
okay.
like, so anybody can
The
apply.
application is closed.
Yeah.
Oh, it is.
Interviewing. Yeah,
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 okay.
we're interviewing.
Well, have y'all
So-
considered, burnout, consider
Ah.
all of these type things? How are you going to?
For real, like
Yeah.
y'all know that, right? That's all gonna come.
So that will definitely be something, you know, as this person because this is new for us. This is like uncharted, you know, water. And like really gauging, you know, what will those incoming calls, those incoming emails look like? We kind of have an idea. We have a call center.
I was gonna say,
We have a call center.
and how many calls do you get? And I know.
From parents specifically around special education, it's a couple of day. You could go some days where there are no parents who call, but I do think once we say, here's the person
So
that will get a flood for just a bit.
Right.
Also-
Hold on a second. It was a
I'm sorry,
handout.
I'm so into this now.
yeah, good.
When there are situations like this now, what happens or where do these calls go? Or who do they contact if there's a problem?
So right now, they are either emailing our special education inbox. We get a lot of parent contact. They're also emailing, some will email our dispute resolution inbox, and we also have a call center. One of the things that came out in the audit report, but when you're talking about a call center, you're talking about people with general knowledge, right? So they weren't getting a person who has experience in special education.
Right.
So a lot of times our call center may focus them to us or focus them to the right people. But we are discussing how, and we've done since the audit report, some training for our call center. Because there were tests done and parents would get different answers, right? You get it depending on who you got at the call center. We've done some training to do some Band-Aid quick repairs. But one of the things now that we're going to have a person that we're really going to try to funnel all parents to figuring out with that call center, you know, and I don't know that this is how it will happen, but you know, press one, you know how you get those calls and you press one for special education, you know, or press one for our special education ombudsman. So really figuring out how we funnel. So we do have a call center. So we do know a little bit about what the volume is right now, a couple a day versus, you know, some days where there may be none.
So, oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
So I'm wondering if we have something that we could potentially add as an agenda item. Should we add legislation to contract with outside entities to provide ombudsman or ombudswoman to the legislative agenda?
You certainly could. I don't know how they would feel if we already have a position that we're in process of filling. I don't know if they would approve another, but maybe, you know, if we see, hey, like the department is getting inundated, this one person, and maybe there's another. I don't think it's a horrible idea.
Yeah, you recognize.
So, like, I just don't get the difference. We have one state ADA coordinator. So now we have one LDOE sped ombudsman. So like, I mean, like in my mind, she's not gonna be as overworked as the AD. Actually, I'd rather be a state ombudsman than an ADA coordinator.
I'm sorry, I have to go back before you were recognized. Miss Christie had her hand up. I'm sorry about
Oh,
that.
that's okay. Just a quick thing. In our blue book that we have to give out to every parent, that usually on the 4th page is where you would see that most parents do not even open the book. So if there's any way y'all could put it on either the cover or the first page. So we could, I mean, we do show them, but after 2 pages, they're done,
Yeah.
to be
you saw the
honest.
Page where it lists the families helping families.
Yes,
And it.
But it's
lists
it's
our
on the
dispute.
4th or 15th page. It's
is.
like way back there. It
Yeah.
needs to be upfront, just as a thought. I really do think that that would be helpful to the ombudsman or whoever, what person
Mhm.
comes in. And that way, the number and everything is right there printed on the blue book. There's no room for, any negative
Yeah. And we'll have to
connotation or anything like that.
Anyway, when we get our special education.
So I think that's one thing that needs to be brought up, and move it from the back or middle to the front. That way there's no misconception.
I agree.
So,
Do you all have a team that's working with the ombudsman? Because I just really have a great concern for that
Yeah.
individual.
For real.
Running for the hills after
should be
day 2.
drinking on the second day.
They will. So one of the
Okay,
things.
like, guys, let's give Mayor.
One of the things that will be really helpful is we have in the department, we also have a person who helps our private school parents. So, having this person also work with, our private school ombudsman to help with, what are some of the things that she sees? How does she help parents? Will be helpful for this person to partner with them. They'll of course have access, to me and my team. And one of the other things that I think will be really helpful for this person and for us, it's new in our state, is to connect our ombudsman or woman to another state's special education ombudsman. That way they can kind of talk about, hey, what's helped you be successful in this role? How have you had to manage tasks? You know what I mean? Plan out, have your calendar where, because we do expect that this person will be providing parent support daily, right? Parent communications, emails, phones, working with school systems, helping them resolve those disputes and work together. And sometimes we get a lot of just general, they're just looking for general informations or questions. And for whatever reason, they didn't go to their local school system. They came up to us to ask. And of course, we're not going to bounce parents around. And so we answer those general questions. And so some of it is not always dispute related, or I don't agree with my school system. Sometimes it's, I'm looking for this, or I need information on this. And so this person will also answer just some of those general information or information seeking questions too. But I think a couple of things we can do to help support this person. I'm hearing y'all say y'all are concerned about this individual.
That's great.
I'll have to bring them here to meet y'all.
Yes.
Please do.
All right, guys, it is 4:26. I do want to reiterate, let's be mindful of our time. Let's be mindful of what we're discussing, and let's be mindful of being recognized by the chair before speaking. Okay? Yes.
So it seems like we have two networks. We have Families Helping Families and we have LaCan. And we typically at HTC, we know we're 50 people and we can't change the state on our own. So when we approach our work, what we do is we attempt to build the capacity that exists within the communities where the issue lies.
Yeah.
It seems to me, taking a more of a tertiary, step it back approach, if you only have one person, is to build the capacity of the LaCan leaders and or Families Helping Families so the complaint comes in either through wherever it comes from. It may come to Families Helping Families and then be communicated up to the ombudsman, or the Families Helping Families person would say, well, you can call this person and at this 800 number and it's confidential and all that good stuff. But what could happen in that situation is then that ombudsman is probably hearing similar complaints or issues around the state and would have the wherewithal and over time build a toolkit for things like this. Then that person, the ombudsman, can assist the local person in that region or community to be a face that somebody recognizes as a support and kind of do that piece from a distance. And when it gets to a head where it's, boiling or whatever, then that ombudsman would, there has to be some kind of, okay, the temperature is now 200 degrees.
Yeah.
We got to get some ice on this thing and cool it down, right? But I don't think one person can do what is needed. But I think there's, 15 or 20 people around the state that could be part of a network that that ombudsman woman can work with. And I think over time, you could have something that would work quite well. That's my recommendation.
I agree. Okay, Ms. Mecca, have you guys, you considered all of these things or?
So we definitely have our partnership with Families Helping Families still as an agency. And so we definitely have talked about, this person will literally have a really wonderful landscape view of what are the issues, what are the concerns of parents, and to be able to say, here are some of the systemic things, here are some of the things that we are hearing more often, and that can change, right? And better help we do some capacity building sessions with Families Helping Families, just getting that information out there, whatever the questions are that are coming. If it's questions about April done, questions about high school graduation requirements, then we can get that information and slides and presentations that they can then go into their networks and deliver. And I would see this ombudsman doing something very, very similar to what you're saying and being very connected to our Families Helping Families, joining me on those check-ins with them where we tell them what we're hearing, they tell us what they're hearing, and we can kind of really work together to help solve and support our families. So I could definitely see that working in that way.
And if I could, I want to take it back to your comment about the legislative piece. To me, if there was an ask, it might be to provide some more resources to whatever the network is, to have those regional people a little more time or a little higher pay or whatever it is, so that the ombudsman, who's the one person, has more of a network of people in each region to work through to help solve problems. So, I could see that as an ask. It's not asking for more of something you already have.
More resources. Yeah.
But at the local level. And we also supposed to have a special education advisory council in each school district now.
Yes.
And that'd be another place to put some resources. So they're trying to solve it from one person is just not gonna work for all the reasons stated. So.
I definitely.
But I think there's some networks that need to be developed to develop.
Speaking of that, advisory council, Mayor, how that's going?
So the local special education advisory councils. So that's one of the things maybe we can put that on our next agenda too, is to get some input from you all. Cause I know we've talked a little bit at our state special education advisory panel, our panel, is those reports and how, and I know we've heard some comments around, maybe the department should put out a template. And so I think hearing from you all what you would like to see, as the community, as parents, what information would you like to see on their annual reports? And I'm more than happy to develop something alongside our SEEP and put that out for our school systems to use as a template for what that annual report would look like. Because they do all look different because there was no template provided.
I have another question. Oh,
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I recognize you.
For our LACEEP meetings, is there any way we could get more information, like whenever we have our meetings so other people could see? Because the last meeting, it was very informative, but all that was listed was the motion and then the motion passed. The motion passed.
Gotcha.
You know,
On our minutes.
Yes,
Yes.
I was like, hey, that was an awesome meeting. And I was like,
It was,
Yeah,
yeah, we
so-
use a standard template, but that doesn't mean we can't.
yes, I just think, because I was like, I went back to look over the minutes and I was like, hey. So I think that would justify some of the, you know,
Absolutely.
okay, thank you so much.
Question, do you all have something in place where you support principals as far as meeting with them, providing them with information as far as they've done, the importance of their staff
We
following
do,
and implementing these
Yeah.
laws in their school?
we have principal webinars. I'm not on all of them, so there's not always a special education topic on all of these principal webinars. But it's definitely something we gotta do more, is support our principals. We're not currently in front. Now, some of these modules, things like that, that certainly principals could use. So some of it is getting them information that's accessible that they can use with their teams to support. One of the things we find really difficult, of course, with principals and teachers is pulling them out of the classroom for professional development. They have enough of that even from their local teams. She's like, no, we don't. Because, you know, competing with local PD and then state PD, it's hard to pull from teachers and principals during the day. So we kind of have to be, you know, we have to be cognizant of trying to do some of that in the evenings too for some of them. But yeah, I think there's more we need to do with principals.
All right, any other?
One
Okay.
last question. How's the special ed playbook? I know we've heard some good things about it, but I know some of our inquiries, you know, Louisiana's different. And if it's not, you must do this, they usually don't do it. That was one of our things that we wondered how many schools have said, oh, yes, this is great information. You know, I know it's awesome, but the thing is, how many schools really are going to put it to work in the classroom?
So what we're actually seeing, we've had some, I call them top growth discussions. I've done them for 2 years now. So our school systems who are demonstrating top growth for students with disabilities on state assessments. We're kind of we had those conversations. We just did the second round of those this year. One of the things that we are finding is those school systems who are showing growth are the ones who are, I wouldn't say anyone is fully implemented best practices for students with disabilities instructionally. But those who are demonstrating top growth are those who are starting. They've done something. They've done it to an extent. They have high quality intervention. They have intervention built in the day equitably for all kids. They're exposing children and using high quality curriculum. And so, you know, I wouldn't say, Christy, that we have school systems that are implementing that 100% and, you know, that all things are perfect around supporting students instructionally. We have gained a lot of momentum. So we did a regional tour. We really dug in. We chunked the playbook. We read it together. They started to self-assess, where am I with school systems? They created action plans. And so we required a 3-person team, the school superintendent, chief academic officers, special education director. Now, some of them, we didn't turn anybody away. Some of them brought school principals. Some of them brought school principals that they're trying to bring on board, right? And say, here's what we should be doing for students with disabilities. Some of them brought pupil appraisal or SPED lead teachers. And we got a lot of great momentum. We got a lot of great feedback. Some of the key action steps that they are out doing right now is we told them, you know, one key action is you need to go back. We talked a lot about, you know, when you're doing walkthroughs and you're doing school visits to your campuses with your leadership team, are you visiting those classrooms where our students with disabilities are? You know, sometimes those are the classrooms that we skip.
Yeah.
We had a lot of difficult and hard conversations, but I felt very received. I felt a lot of positive. I was so excited for not all superintendents came, right? But the superintendents who were in the room and those school system leaders alongside their SPED person really showing that supporting our kids with disabilities has to be a joint effort. It's not one person. They're all of our children. And so I think we've got a lot of great momentum, a lot of great action steps. So they talked a lot about going back, talking about their data, digging into their student with disabilities data, doing learning walks, going into their school systems to see, what's happening in those study skills classes, what's happening in resource, what does intervention look like? How is it high quality intervention? Is it tied to their curriculum where they're really going to close achievement gaps and help grow those kids in reading and math? And so I feel like we have really great momentum, but we're so early in implementation. It's literally step one. And it will have to be a journey to really redefine and reimagine special education and how we're supporting our students in our state. But I think we've got some things in writing. We've got Nebraska, a couple of other states that have reached out and said, hey, we want to copy this. I'm like, I don't have time for you. I've got to do me. I've got to do my kid.
It's a great beginning. I think it's wonderful and, especially for our kids, because if you do 1 or 2, you can do 5 to 10 regular children along with it.
Right.
Who might need the support.
Yeah.
And so I just, thank you.
I think the hardest one for people is going to be our third best practice, which is content strong.
Yeah.
So in a world where there are staff shortages, that is a hard pill to swallow right now. But one of the things we can start having hard conversations about is the individuals that we are putting in front of our children, the expertise that they have, and some of the adult practices around staffing and the people we're putting in front of our children. And so I think we can do better. It will be hard, but we can do better.
All right, Dr. Bill, 2 to 3 minutes.
I just want to jump on what you just said in a positive way and say that I've been saying for the last 15 or 20 years that one of the things that Louisiana has failed miserably at is the dismantling of the personnel prep programs in this state, meaning the special education programs. We have no severe disabilities, teacher training programs. We have one program for teachers of the blind. We have one for hearing, deaf, hard of hearing, I'm not sure. And when we went to the Teach for America kind of a model, and like we can get teachers certified in a year or less, we just basically threw away our commitment to what you were just speaking to.
I agree.
And, that's something that we need to, since you seem to know about legislation, I'm not very good in that area, but that's something that really, I haven't heard our governor-elect really be much of an advocate around higher education in these low incidence kind of areas. I hope we can get his ear. You have a comment, sorry.
Can I respond to it?
Yes, ma'am, go ahead.
So I love advocating for change in legislation and like to do change through legislation. One of my big things is I want to amend Bulletin 1508.
Oh, well, that happens on a regular basis, I think, right?
We're going to open 1508 this year. That's me and you. That's the department. That's not legislation. So we can
Go ahead, girl. Let's go.
We might not have enough time, but tell me what you want to do.
So basically with IEPs, students, lots of students are having trouble getting them, even though it's very clear they need them. Like there's a clear need for them in the classrooms. The teachers see it, but they're not addressing it. Counselors and principals see it, but they're not addressing it. And then also it blocks medical access, like they rely on things you need an IEP to get a waiver.
Yeah.
You also need, they try to diagnose you with autism through the school.
Yeah,
Not a medical diagnosis.
it's not a member.
Exactly,
Yeah.
and they say they're not doctors,
Yeah.
but they're trying to play doctor with us,
Mhm.
which is a big problem because I have an autism diagnosis and I'm trying to go through the IEP process right now before I get to college. But they looked at me and they're trying to say, oh, but I'm fine, my grades are high. I don't have autism, even though it's very apparent my problems are autism related.
Wow.
So I would like to, I see that happening with other students as well, and I've seen it happen with several other like diagnoses, not just autism, but ADHD and other things, also mental health related things, not just developmental disabilities. And I would like to change that so we can have easier access to IEPs and so that it doesn't block access to waivers and stuff like medical things. Because I don't think that's right.
Wow.
Interesting point.
Yes.
So I just have just a quick, like, maybe question. Do you have to have a disability to get an IEP? Do you have to be diagnosed with one? Like, you have to be, right?
Yes.
You have to
Yes.
have you have to meet eligibility via 1508 criteria, not eval.
What that really boils down to is you don't have to have a
Could be
a
medical.
medical diagnosis. What you have to have is the criteria 1508,
Right.
which relates to your ability to benefit from the general education curriculum.
Right.
So if there's something that, you're dyslexic or something, that could be a medical thing, or it could just be, you can't read as fast or comprehend or whatever. So that's going to, impair you. A person who's completely blind might not qualify for special education if he or she can read Braille and, but they would get a 508 to, maybe they need mobility training or something like that.
Right.
But so it is a murky thing. And I think, back to your point, it may not be so much of wanting to get a Medicaid waiver, because a Medicaid waiver just simply means you have a need for basically 24-hour care in a facility, but you're going to get a waiver from those services because you can live in the community if you just give me some other things to help me address those handful of things, like in your case, that are really making your life challenging for you to achieve what you want to. So I wouldn't couch it in terms of a waiver, because I don't think that that's probably what you're looking for. You need services, adult services that may be mental health, maybe transportation, I don't know what they are, but that whole waiver thing might be asking for a little bit more than what you really are looking for. But go ahead.
Well, in general, medical related things that shouldn't have to be school related at all.
Mhm.
We don't have access to because the school has to go through it first and the school's not a doctor.
That's correct. Yeah. I mean, the systems are, Medicaid is always going to be the payer of last resort. So if the school has what you need, and then they're arguing about who does what, it
Well,
leaves you in
that
the
and if
stuck.
I have to flunk out of school in order to be deemed autistic enough.
Right.
Yeah.
But I am the type of person who strives for perfection and I cannot handle having a bad grade. Like, I get mad if my grade goes below a 96. So if I was flunking, I would probably hate myself.
Yeah, don't flunk. You should.
It wouldn't be good, but basically I have to flunk out of school for them to give me accommodations. However, I would be out of school by the time I flunked.
Right. Yeah, you
It's a
should-
loophole. They don't want to accommodate us at all.
But you should be able to get those accommodations through a 508 plan. You really should.
504?
504.
That's exactly what you're talking about.
But you know what I mean? You should be able to get those accommodations, not necessarily with an
I
IEP.
should have had them already.
Right. Yep. So it sounds like you have an open ear for like getting some good ideas for the department to consider,
Yeah.
for sure.
Right. Great discussion. Any other questions anyone may have? Any other concerns? Any announcements?
I know there's a whole lot of new people on this committee, but I've been here for 9 years and today's this is my last meeting. But we have seen so much change in this short amount of time. You'll never learn it all, but pick the things that you want to start working on and work towards it together. I cannot tell you what a change we have seen with Department of Education since you've been here, Meredith.
Yeah, I agree.
Really appreciate it.
It has been, and as I sit here today and say, I know LaPie, we got those kids, in college, and we worked on all those things that are on that action plan and on our legislative agenda and all of those things. It comes from here. So please know that you cannot ask a stupid question. You cannot, you're always learning. And we help those people who come here from Department of Education, from OCDD, from all of those departments that give us those meetings, notes tomorrow, and you're looking through them, or you're like, I don't even know what they're talking about. Take time to try to get a little hunk at a time, and you will make a difference. It has, I've seen it, and it's remarkable. So I appreciate that, that I've been able to work with so many people and learn so many things, but the DD Council is very important, and I'm so excited that I've been a part of it, and I'll watch y'all on the YouTube channel now.
There you go. Thank you for your
Say that.
service. Yeah.
Were you there when they were first talking about LaPie? That's amazing.
LRS, there's a whole lot that goes on. We do tend to be more educationally aware than LRS sometimes, but they're important.
All right, well,
Yes.
Transition grant
Yes.
and how we fit it or.
any other questions or concerns? It is now 4:52.
We can sneak off if you want.
All right,
That's
so
Yeah.
I would like to thank Ms. Mary for those words and thank her for personally encouraging me. Thank you so much, Ms. Mary, and to Mrs. Webb. I have often looked upon you, Mrs. Webb, and you really inspire me. You speak so well, you speak so confidently at every meeting, and I'm always inspired by you. So thank you for always contributing and having such great wisdom. Thank you. Also to Miss Stacy, thank you so much. Appreciate it. And also to Meredith as well. I appreciate you and your contributions to this committee. And also Dr. Phil, thank you so much for today. Great information, great insight to the council. Thank you so much for attending.
Yeah.
And also to everyone else, Hannah, Ebony, and everyone, thank you for your contributions today. Tomorrow is the full council meeting, which will begin at 8:30 a.m. Any other announcements that anyone need to make?
I have a quick one. You guys might get bored when I talk tomorrow at our agency thing, because I'm gonna try to get a little bit of this discussion about FASD out for the full council. So instead of talking about what we did last quarter, I'll probably, it's in our report. So just nod off when I talk.
On tomorrow, it may be there may be someone else chairing and you may not get the same.
Oh, no, I'm on the agenda. I'm on the agenda. I know that.
Just letting you know. You're gonna be thankful for me.
Oh.
All right, so any objections or anything? All right, okay, I hereby adjourn the meeting at 4:54.
Yay.
Thank you.
I get to go fight bad and New Orleans
Oh,
traffic.
thanks.
I'm freaking out because